reality is upon us. I think it's incumbent upon every leader, every citizen, and every follower to emulate the man who has become a martyr for the cause of nonviolence. I think we cannot afford to let this man have fallen in vain.
Good afternoon. My name is Patrick Range II. I'm the former chair of the Virginia Key Beach Park Trust and also an attorney and business owner here in the city of Miami. And so just wanted to give a bit of background, a bit of history on Virginia Key Beach Park and the Virginia Key Beach Park Trust, and also the involvement of my grandmother in the creation of the trust, Miss Athalie Range, who was a former city commissioner, actually the first black city commissioner here in the city of Miami. And so as my grandmother came to retirement age, she never really retired, of course. She continued to work in the community up until the time of her passing. And one of her last labors of love was to assist with the restoration of the Virginia Key Beach Park. Back in 1945, the Virginia Key Beach Park was first opened. It was called at that time Bears Cut. And it was first opened for blacks to be able to go and recreate. Of course, that was in segregation days, segregation times, and blacks could not go to many places, many establishments or venues that white folks could. And of course, that included parks and beaches. Blacks could not go to what we now know as South Beach or Hallover, any of the typical beach places that we frequent nowadays. And so there were some protests back before 1945 against the fact that there were no recreational spaces for blacks to go. And so at the insistence of these protesters, eventually the authorities, the county and so forth, got together and they made available what is now known as Virginia Key Beach for blacks to be able to go and recreate. And so in those days, there was actually no Rickenbacker Causeway, and so you could not drive to the beach. You actually had to take a boat. And so my grandmother, of course, was able to visit the beach with her family during those times and had many good days. Of course, the beach, because it was one of the only places that we could go for recreation, was used for all sorts of not only recreational events, but also religious events. So not only did we have things like birthdays and family reunions and those sorts of things out at the beach, but we also had baptisms. Many churches came out and held baptisms, Easter sunrise services, those sorts of things. So Virginia Key Beach really became kind of that sacred place that we could go and kind of do things as we wanted to. And so obviously as we came out of segregation and into integration, blacks were able to now go and frequent the beaches that we do today, all over South Beach, all of the others. And so because of that, not as many folks continued to go to Virginia Key Beach. And I'm sure that that was due to the distance and so forth. Certainly has not ever really been the easiest place to get to. And so the park eventually fell into disrepair, and eventually the county closed it in 1982. And no one used the park until much later on. Some may remember some of the splashdown events that Luther Campbell and some other folks threw in those 90s, late 80s and 90s. And so that was really the only use out at Virginia Key Beach for a while. And eventually our proposal came forward from a developer to the city of Miami, who proposed to develop an eco resort on Virginia Key Beach Park. And as that word got out to the community, community members were incensed and said, absolutely not. We cannot allow this sacred ground to be taken over by private interests. This land, this historic Virginia Key Beach Park, should remain open to the public in perpetuity. This land should be a monument, a testament to Black history, to our history, to Native Miamians' history here. And so there was an effort that was started by persons like Gene Tinney, Dick Townsend, and later my grandmother, Athalie Range, who came together with other constituents, community activists, to tell the city, no, we will not allow you to turn this over to a private developer. We think this land should be protected, and we'd like it to be reopened to the public and be available for all to enjoy. And so those were the efforts of this committee, which was called at that time the Virginia Key Beach Task Force. Eventually, this task force was morphed into the Virginia Key Beach Park Trust, of which my grandmother became the founding chairperson. And so she began at that point to then spearhead the efforts to reopen the park, to bring back a lot of the original features and attractions that the park had back in segregation days. And so the trust worked very hard to not only bring back those elements like the mini train and the carousel, the dance pavilion, all of these sorts of things, which are now there and open and available to members of the public, but also to do an environmental restoration of the park. So we had many volunteers come out and help us with removing a lot of the exotic plants that were there that had overgrown the park over time. And they removed those exotic species, plant species, and began to do native plantings, plantings of native flora and fauna that you would naturally find, back in the days on Virginia Key. So we spent a lot of money, a lot of effort into doing that. We also were able to obtain a grant from the Army Corps of Engineers to do a renourishment of the beach. A lot of the beach sand had drifted away into the current over the years, and so the beach, the sand was not as plentiful as it once was. So we were able to get the Army Corps to come in and renourish the beach.